Hello YouTube and fellow DC Comic fans, I'm Keith One Shot and this is my Comic Complete Dramatic Reading Series, and today we will be covering The Flash issue 29, negative part 2 from DC Comics. All art, text, characters, and storylines belong to DC Comics and their respective owners, not me. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to go out and support DC Comics in your local comic book shop. We start the story off at Barry Allen's apartment, where we see the Flash setting up a bath for himself. His costume is ripped and torn apart as he steps into the tub. We hear Barry narrate, "Blast from Captain Cold's ice gun will give you frostbite in seconds. One of Captain Boomerang's boomerangs to the back of the head will make you dizzy. Glider's trendles can squeeze you so tight, you'll hear your bones break before you feel it. Reverse Flash uses speed to fight dirty, and Grotto is hit the hardest. But no matter how badly I was hurt, my super speed metabolism always helped me heal. I took it for granted. I should call Batman and ask him what his secret is, how he deals with a hard night. Oh yeah, he has Alfred as butler, someone who helps him when he's hurt, when he messes up." We then see the Flash soaking in the tub, healing his wounds, as he thinks back to his recent battle with Shrapnel. Barry then remembers himself saying, "Shrapnel, you killed him!" Shrapnel then says,
"Barely, Flash, but hey, without your help, I would have never caught them in the first place. You might as well be my accomplice."
We then see the fight in Barry's memory. Shrapnel smashes Negative Flash, sending him flying, as Flash says, "No!" Shrapnel then shouts,
"Give me all you got, Flash!"
Barry thinks to himself, Shrapnel was right. The motorcycle gang died because of me. I rushed into things without thinking. I deserve that beating. Shrapnel then said to the Flash,
"Ha ha ha! You ain't fighting back, Flash. The boss would feed me to the garbage compactor if I killed you, but it would be worth it."
Barry then thinks to himself, "Boss!" We then see during the fight, Negative Flash creates a huge explosion, giving off a loud crack-a-boom, knocking the Flash back and blowing up Shrapnel to pieces. Barry then thinks to himself, "I didn't know I could do that. Shrapnel thought his attacks were going to kill me, but with each punch, my destructive aura was building up until it exploded. In the past, I loved when I would discover a new talent with the Speed Force, but now, it felt like a hollow lesson in victory. At least the blast is big enough to keep Shrapnel from reforming long enough for Iron Heights to place him in a magnetic field that keeps his parts separate. I got lucky. Others didn't." After the police secure Shrapnel, one of the officers says to the Flash, "Damn, the bikers hit up a few bank trucks this week, but they didn't deserve to get ripped apart like that." Another officer then says, "It could have been a lot worse if you hadn't stopped Shrapnel, Flash." Flash then tells the officers, I should have saved them." The first officer then replies, "I tell myself the same thing every day, just part of the job." Flash then leaves the scene, as we hear the officers talking to themselves. Is Flash walking?" The other officer replies, "Huh, that's weird." Barry then thinks to himself, "My powers are a danger to the city, and ever since I got infected by the negative Speed Force, it takes a lot longer to heal. I'll need more time here before I can let anyone see me like." Just then, Barry's phone gets a text from Christian Kramer saying, "What the hell, Alan? Where are you? Need help at the lab. ASAP." As Barry soaks in the tub, he says to himself, "Wait, Shrapnel said he had a boss." We then go to the Central City Crime Lab, where Barry is looking up a list of the Flash's rogues on the Crime Lab's database. Barry then thinks to himself, all the rogues are still in Iron Heights. Who is Shrapnel talking about? No reports on the wire. Organized crime in Central City has been quiet for years. Multiple scattered gangs. Nothing big. Is there a new crime boss in Central City? Maybe I can lean on Shrapnel about." Then suddenly, Christian Kramer comes into Barry's lab and says, "Alan, where have you been? I've been covering for you all day. Sin asked us for help with the missing evidence, and then you just took off." Barry then replies, "Sorry, I had things to do, Kristen." Then Kristen says, "Don't you always? You show up late in the day, and you look... Are you drunk, Alan?" Barry then tells Kristen, "What? No." Then Kristen says, "You've always been a bit weird, but lately..." Then Barry says, "No, I just..." Kristen then grabs Barry's wrist, walking him out of his lab, as she says to him, "If Sin sees you like this, he'll take it out on the whole lab. Come with me. We'll hide you until you sober up." Barry replies, "I'm not." Kristen then tells Barry, "Burns and Morrows have their own ways of investigating the missing evidence, but you and I are going to research the evidence itself, so try to make yourself look busy and give those files a read." Barry then thinks to himself, "Normally I would speed read these, but if I use my new powers, I destroy all the files. I've gotten accustomed to using my speed to solve my cases. Now that I can't use it, I wonder how useful to the crime lab I really am." Barry then grabs the files and says, "I need to take these files to my lab to study them." Kristen then tells Barry as the two are walking down the stairs, "Sorry, Barry, but we're not going to your lab." Barry then says, "Where are we going?" Then Kristen replies, "While you were gone doing God knows what, I took a look at the missing evidence, and I noticed that all the samples are biological. Not guns, not bullet shell casings, and there are only 2 places in CCPD cold enough to preserve those kinds of samples, and that means a visit to the basement." Once the two enter the crime lab's basement, they go to the morgue. Then Barry says, "How are things going down here, Ramsey?" Ramsey then replies, "Oh, you know, just another day in paradise." Kristen then asks Ramsey, "You cool if I take a look at your evidence lockup? I think I left one of my kits in there." Ramsey then answers, "No problem, I'm done. Myocardial infraction from poison. But with one look at his insides, you can tell he didn't take care of himself. Would have died anyway. Sure, it's gross, but if I didn't do the dirty work, cases would never get solved. Am I right? At the end of the day, I know my job will help someone find..." Barry then says, "Justice." Ramsey says, yes, Mr. Allen, your nose, it's bleeding. Barry then thinks to himself, dang it, haven't healed from shrapnel's punches yet. Then Barry replies to Ramsey by saying, oh, I'm okay, Kristen then grabs Barry by the wrist and says, Barry falls down on the job a lot, Ramsey. Anyway, my kit wasn't in your lab. My mistake. We'll let you get back to your bodies. Thanks, Ramsey. As the two leave and go up the stairs, Barry says, what was that all about? Then Kristen answers, I just wanted to show you how with a little distraction, it's super easy to get samples at a CCPD. Barry then says, did you just steal something, Kristen? Then, as the two get to the top of the stairs, they're greeted by Detective Burns and Morrow. Then Detective Morrow says, hey, we were just looking for you two. Detective Burns then says, do you lab rats want to compare notes on Sin's case in our lab? Then Barry says, while confused, your lab? We then jump over to Sherry's pub where Barry says, I don't know if a bar is the best place to talk about a case. Then Burns tells Barry, it's a cop bar, Barry. Everyone is talking about a case. Then Morrow says, listen to Burns, Alan. Sit down. Have a drink for God's sake. Even you have to loosen up every once in a while. Barry then tells him, I don't drink. Morrow then smiles and says, a quiet guy like you who doesn't drink always has other vices. Kristen then says, stop busting Barry's balls, Morrow. Then Burns turns around and says, if Sin wants to watch cops, this is the place to do it. Someone will talk. I'm guessing this whole missing evidence thing will end up being something simple. A big old mix-up. Barry then says with a serious look on his face, why do you say that? Detective Burns then answers, CCPD is the greatest police station in the world, and that ain't an opinion. I walked my first beat in Gotham, and my partner there was on take. He thought he was clever, thought no one was going to catch on, that he was working with Two-Face, but I did the right thing and turned him in. It was Gotham, so that got me a rep as a rat, but if someone in CCPD was dirty, I'd know. Detective Morrow then says, personally, I think it's Sin. Kristen then stands up and shouts, Sin, please. If you wanted us to come down here and tell us that Sin did this to cover his own tracks, I'm gonna skip it. Barry then asks, you okay? Then Kristen tells him, if I'm not on the clock, I'm not working. Detective Burns then sits back and says with a smile, the office gossips that Kramer's got a man she keeps locked away from the riffraff she works with. Then Morrow says, don't know how you manage to separate work and home, Kay? Kristen then puts on her coat and says, divide and conquer, gentlemen. Try to be on time tomorrow, Alan, as she leaves the bar. Detective Morrow then says, so, you're the golden boy, Alan, the best CSI in Central City. Why didn't Sin go directly to Internal Affairs? He's a very by-the-book kind of guy, right? Something else is up. Something Sin isn't telling us. What's your honest read, Alan? Then Morrow hands Barry some files. As Barry is looking over the files, he says, Kristen was right. All the cases had biological samples stolen, but it was more than that. They were bloody. Detective Burns then says, they were violent. So what? Then Barry replies, no. All of the missing evidence had extensive blood work done. Where did Sin get these files? Detective Morrow then answers, from the record room back at the station. Why? Barry then says, it took us so long to notice, because they were careful. They knew what they were looking for, and they must have had access to the files, so they could search for what they needed. Detective Burns then says, Barry, if you're saying what I think you're saying, we need to follow orders, and take this to Sin. Barry then stands up and says, if someone is stealing evidence, they're endangering the lab's reputation. We can't wait for Sin. Detective Morrow then says, look at Detective Allen over here. You're gonna crack the case all by yourself? Then Burns adds in by saying, you go snooping around the records room now, you might tip someone off that we're looking into things. Barry then tells the two detectives, I go to the records room all the time. They know me. It'll just seem like a routine thing. I'll check the logs of who's been looking at the old case files, and we'll all talk this in tomorrow, okay? As Barry leaves and heads back to the station, he thinks to himself, I understand Burns and Morrow's worries, but I need to do this by myself. We then see Barry walk inside of the building, then say, hey Danny, you there? It's Barry from the crime lab. I was wondering if I could. Then Barry notices how dark and empty the building seems. As he sees a door cracked open, he says, no guards. Then he enters the door. As Barry walks into the evidence room, he sees several bodies on the ground bleeding. Then Barry says, my God! Then, as he checks on the bodies, he thinks to himself, Danny, the guards, they're alive. What did this? Just then, Barry notices a fire growing in the back of the room. Barry then thinks to himself, the records! Someone torched them! If I use my powers, I might only make this worse, but I don't need my powers. I'll get these people to safety and then call for help. Oh no! Still exhausted from the fight with shrapnel. Have to push past pain. Then suddenly, Barry collapses to the floor as the building burns around him, and that ends today's story. Comic published by DC Comics. All rights, story art, and characters belong to DC Comics and their respective owners, not me. This has been The Flash, issue 29, Negative Part 2, and I'm your host, Keith One Shot. If you like this video, make sure to check out the rest of my Comic Complete dramatic reading series, and support DC Comics by picking up a copy of the trades and single issue comics. Support your local comic book shop, take care, and have a great day. Goodbye!